of learning.
Navigating COVID while protecting yourself can be difficult. Fortunately, there's a hotline you can call with any questions. The Department of Indian Work St. Paul partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health to open the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. They provide information on vaccines, booster shots, and testing sites. Right now, booster shots are available to anyone over the age of 18 for those who are eligible. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline can also help with housing, food, medical, and educational support. If you or someone you know has questions about COVID-19, vaccinations, booster shots, or testing, please call 651-304-9986. Again, the number is 651-304-9986. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline is open for calls Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline at 651-304-9986.
COVID vaccines are safe and available for anyone over the age of 6 months, and booster shots are available for anyone over the age of 5. Getting vaccinated will protect you from severe illness and hospitalization from COVID. If you're still not sure about getting vaccinated, talk to your doctor. They can answer any questions you have about safety and vaccine effectiveness. This message brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic. Find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for partly cloudy skies tonight with a low around 66, Wednesday partly sunny with a high near 80, and Wednesday night a chance for thunderstorms with a low around 68. Eat Local Minnesota is a great way to find locally owned Minnesota restaurants and food purveyors. They feature high-quality food and unique eating experiences for your next meal. Some of those restaurants include Hazel's Northeast and Cafe Latte. Find a full list of all of those restaurants at eatlocalminnesota.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Kadagi, to all my friends and relatives in 4 directions, you are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is the first offering of Tuesdays of Rock the Vote Native Style, and we're here with Heather Keeler, who's going to be our co-host every once in a while. I think every other week. I don't know. We'll have to check out what her contract is. But also, what is this portion brought to you by Ogama?
This portion of the show is brought to you by MN350.
A grassroots organization fighting climate justice. How do I remember that? Where's Wendy? Hey, so we are really excited. We're going to open up the first show of Rock the Vote Native Style with Heather Keeler. And we kind of want to do I don't know, Heather, you're too young to know this, but there was a show called This Is Your Life. And basically, we're not going to have people come in and talk about how great you are. We're going to, me and Ogama are going to talk about your journey really to where you are right now, where you want to go, where you've come from, and to get our audience all over the country here to know who you are. And I think it's just really exciting to have you on. So Heather, why don't you open up with a groovy opening statement and let our people all over the country know who you are.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Heather Keeler. I am Minnesota State Representative for District 4A. I am Yankton, so I'm an enrolled member of the Yankton Sioux tribe down in South Dakota with lineage to Eastern Shoshone. I am just finishing up my first term here in the Minnesota State Legislature and actually running for re-election. It's been a really interesting journey, and I'm sure we're going to dig into it a little bit more, but politics was something I actually really despised. I hated it. I hated what it was doing to our communities. And instead of just living in that space and living in that pain, I turned it into purpose and passion through politics. And so trying to really keep in mind the 7-generation mind frame, and that the work that I do here is stemming from what has happened to generations before me, and that it's my role to impact in a positive way the next generation after me. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be back and talking about voting and the importance of getting our Indigenous communities out, and our voices in these spaces is so important. So I'm happy to be back and join every other week.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, we were doing a lot of Sunday symposiums, and then it turned into Sunday symposium, and then there was a rumor that this person, Heather Keeler, was going to run, and the excitement was happening. And talk about that whole thing, because you were basically going to be a school board member or running for school board.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And as I reflect on my journey, I think that's what we have to do as we move forward. Is there's always a time of reflection to see how did we really end up here? Because in the last 4 years, I went from being a Native American liaison, absolutely loving that job, sitting in living rooms with our families, working with our most beautiful population, our kids, to now like being in this space. And how am I supposed to use this platform? How did I get here? How did the creator lead me here? And so it actually started through education. I had an associate's degree for a long time, working what I thought was going to be my career in Indian education. And I realized that I really wanted to be at tables where these bigger decisions were being made for us. Like nobody was coming to Indian education and saying, hey, what do your kids need? Your Native American students have the biggest achievement gap, all of these data points that we hear. And I realized that the decision-making tables didn't involve people like me. And I knew that education was the pathway to those tables. I had no clue what those tables were going to be. So I went for my bachelor's, and some of the professors in that part of my life told me I was going to go get my master's and go on and do bigger things. And they believed in me in a way that an education system had never believed in me before. So went on, got my master's, and during my practicum, my work through that was doing talking circles with our community to figure out what the barriers were to academic success outside of academic rigor. So what that means is I wasn't asking people what subjects are hard for you. It was what were the outside barriers? And we all know it's food insecurity, housing, access to healthcare appointments, just representation in general in our classrooms, in our curriculum, in our decision making. And so I took that information, graduated with my master's in December of 2019, made my New Year's resolution that I thought the best option for me was to go to school board, because I wanted to be a really strong point in decision making on what was going to happen in our schools. And then Ben Lean announced his retirement. And the funny part is, Robert, people were like, you should run for 4A. And I was like, I have no clue what 4A even means. I don't know what a House representative, what that position does. And then it reminded me that voter suppression was only one part of what they did to our community. They also haven't given us the path or, left us breadcrumbs to figure out how to be at those seats. And so the message that I used to share with my Indian education students of go out and be what you want to see in this world, I had to challenge myself that I needed to do that. And so I stepped up, and ran on a whim because I thought my community and the state deserved options. And it's the best decision I've made so far.
It is. Hey, let's just back up a little bit, because I'm a former educator, and we talk about the discrepancies. And I know, in St. Paul, where I was a high school teacher, I was in the Indian parent committee, and I think some of the problems that I saw was that 56% of graduation rate was okay with people. and they were happy about that. And I'm telling you, from my perspective, Heather, if that was out in Edina in a white suburb, this would be on the news. Red flags would be happening. I mean, all this money, and it's just insane what they think is okay for us.
It's interesting that you say that, because we saw that happen in the pandemic. I sat in my first term, so every member sits on committees. And I sit on 4, one of which is the Education Policy Committee. Because again, coming from the education lane, it was amazing how many times we had to state for the record that this is not the first time we've had learning loss or academic loss in populations. It just happens to be that with the pandemic, we saw it happen in our primary population. And now all of a sudden, everybody's worried about education. And I keep saying, the education system has had massive gaps in it for decades. Like, this is not brand new. It just happens to be people are worried about it now because it's impacting, their privileged populations. And so, I try to call it out that these are not brand new issues. They're just impacting a bigger population. And so now people want to do something about it.
Yeah, and we got a couple minutes before break, our first break, but I want to go through your experience this past year, what it's done to you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And I also want to go through with you how we can support you, other Native and BIPOC and allies that are coming, that are running, and really rock the vote. So this is going to be a fun journey, and I want this show to be all about you. So our people that are listening, you won't have to reintroduce you each week.
Yeah. And I like that we're going to have honest conversations here. I think that's one of the things that we need to do in this movement, of what I feel is really healing our generation, healing our next generations, healing Mother Earth, our communities. Like, it's just a lot of healing right now. And that has to start with honest, truthful conversations. And that really is how do we support our leaders? How do we support each other in these really, really trying times? So I'm looking forward to those conversations.
Yeah, and 2, we're going to take a break here in just about a minute. But in 2, I'd love to have people call in too. So I'm going to throw out the number 952-946-6205, and we're going to eventually we're going to have the Ask Heather little portion right here that we'll make famous here. So I'm glad you're on. Ogama is running everything in the background, and we're here with State Representative Heather Keeler of Minnesota, and you are listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and we'll be back with Heather and Ogama after this short break. Stay with us.
J&S Bean Factory is a Native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
When we heal from our traumas,
when we face our fears,
let go of our addictions,
when we relearn our values,
when we live our teachings,
respecting our elders,
cherishing and honoring our children,
when we honor and take care of our spirit,
there will be no room left for sexual violence.
Sponsored by Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
College textbooks have never been more expensive. In fact, textbook costs can make college unaffordable to many prospective students. That's especially true for Native Americans. But a new initiative called Course Breaks wants to help with textbook costs for Native American students. Course Breaks partners with book publishers and tribal colleges and universities to provide free textbooks. But Course Breaks needs your help to continue their mission. Become a donor to help Indigenous students continue their education. To discuss a corporate or private contribution, visit coursebreaks.com.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
This is Winona LaDuke of Honor the Earth, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio. I'm awake.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization working for climate justice.
Right on, Ogama. Hey, I'm here with Heather Keeler, co-host of Rock the Vote Native Style, presented by Native Roots Radio and MN350. We're talking a little bit about the history of Heather and her education, and then switching in the last. Heather, wasn't it like the last day or hour?
Oh, like minutes.
Yeah.
It was 5 minutes before I went in for the convention to decide. I was going to do stump speeches for school board. And when I walked in and didn't see any other women running or any other members of underserved communities, I was like, I guess this is what I'm going to do. And I just switched my speech and started telling people why I thought it was so important to send me to do this job at a state level, as I was like learning what this job really was going to be about.
Right. And, it's been a trying couple years because of COVID, because of just everything. And then also how to legislate, because I'm a legislator for Ho-Chunk Nation. And I mean, we are in front of the computers all the time if we're not there. And it's just a hard deal in many, many respects, but also being a Native woman and going to places that people don't expect to see you. I mean, all these things meshed up into your first year. Can you let's talk about being sworn in and how exciting that was, and maybe the first excitement and maybe the disappointments. Let's talk a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I think the timeline is important. So I graduated, with my master's in December of 19. Was going to do school board, decided not to. February of 2020 is when I made the decision to run. Kind of had heard about this pandemic thing coming, kind of had not really known what it was going to be. So I went all in. I had one event. I was really excited. I love getting out and talking to people. I was the #1 Girl Scout cookie seller 3 years in a row. Getting out and talking to my community was what I really was looking forward to doing. And then March 16th, we all went home for what we thought was going to be, a couple weeks, and it turned into this massive pandemic. And so it switched what my mind frame was going to be in not only the campaign, but in my entire life. I'm a mom. I have 2 boys. They started learning from home. I was trying to figure out how to be a candidate in a world I didn't know how to do that, in a pandemic world where I was working from home, trying to teach my kids from home. And then George Floyd was murdered. And it was now Minnesota, Minneapolis was looked at on an even bigger scale for even more social unrest. And it's something that I am really passionate about as not only an Indigenous woman, but I send a teenage boy out into this world that's Native and Black. And so it's really important to me. And so we added that on top of it. And then we went into legislating. And I will say my freshman class was phenomenal. I mean, if you ever want to do some research on who came into the legislature in the middle of the pandemic, the DFL freshman team came in like we didn't read the handbook. We didn't know we're just supposed to sit back and learn. We came in full throttle, ready to make changes and make a difference. But we had to do that all, like you said, Robert, behind a screen. It took me weeks to even figure out where the bathroom was, let alone how to do this brand new process in a world that nobody else had done legislating virtually like this. And so really navigating through the hardships that I think we've all gone through as individuals, as moms, as partners through the pandemic. So it's been extremely emotional, and it's trying, it's traumatic. Historical trauma comes up daily. And so Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about my family, my community, and really digging back into that holistic mind frame that we talk about as Indigenous people. That if we're not aligned, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, that it really does throw us off. And I've experienced that, and I've tried to talk really openly about that as well.
Yeah, that's got to be hard because I know you've been on the show and a couple times we've reached out, and again, sorry about the last minute reach out, just a kidding. But it was good timing because we are the Heather Keeler fan club here on Native Roots Radio. And I always told Peggy this when I was teaching, and I want to tell you this too, is that it's always important for our young ones to see somebody that looks like them in places of power, and especially women, and especially we won't get into this right at this segment, but just what's going on right now, the attack on women and women's rights. Um, uh, we have to really support our women because that's the way we're supposed to be doing it as natives. And Peggy always talked about walking into a building that doesn't want her there. Do you have a feeling like that too? I mean,
Oh, every day. Like, there are moments that I even say to myself, I can't do this job any longer when I walk into this building and I don't realize the power that I have in a building that was never designed for me. So I don't know, for those of you who haven't been in the Minnesota Capitol, and the story with Pipestone in our creation story, and the fact that the rotunda of the Capitol actually has pipestone in it. And the way that it's presented in the tours is like, how beautiful is this? How great is this? We've included, the native culture. What they don't really understand is that's the blood of our ancestors. That's not a way to include us. We have Abraham Lincoln sitting behind us on the speaker's rostrum. Like, there's just really kind of these weird, harmful narratives of this history that's false, or not fully true, that is represented in this space, and you wonder why decisions are being made the way that they are. And so, yeah, absolutely, it's not a place that was ever designed for us. Not only that, it's actually a place where decisions are being made to try to continue to eliminate us. So the fact that we're there is just like resiliency in its finest factors.
no doubt. It's just missing gargoyles, I think, right? It's just what the heck. But the whole deal about being in a place that you're not wanted and having the numbers they weigh, how close they are of representation, and the Senate being Republican, that has to be weighing on anybody, but especially somebody that's grounded like you with feelings and I can't imagine.
A lot of feelings. Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive empath. Like, I think that's why I was so good at being a liaison, because I could really listen and hear those stories and then make decisions carrying that weight of the feelings and the emotions behind that. And so when you sit in testimony, and I'm the vice chair with Representative Gomez for the Preventing Homelessness Committee, and you want to hear heart wrenching stories of like the real life things that are happening, that's what we listen to, and that's what we take with us when we go and we really fight behind the scenes for some of these changes. But I will tell you, through and through, I am unapologetically Indigenous. Before I'm a Democrat, before I'm a politician, before I'm anything. And I make that very clear in all of the spaces that our sovereign nations and our tribal relations are what I feel is paramount. It's primary. It's what we have to be doing in this state to really move forward. And I'm an advocate for that in every space that I possibly can be.
Yeah, I know, and that's exciting. And Ogama, did you have something to say? Oh, I thought I saw you raise your hand. I feel like
Yeah, I
okay.
actually
Oh,
I actually do. So there's
okay.
no gargoyles on the Minnesota State Capitol building, but there is this really big gold sculpture above the front entranceway, and it's called the Progress of the State, or the Quadriga. And it's a four-horse chariot that is being pulled with a male figure, and there's two female figures. And the male figure is supposed to represent the state. The two female figures represent Minnesota's agriculture and industry, and the four horses represent earth, water, fire, and wind. But there's no Native people represented in the state. in this architecture on the state building. And I think we've heard from other legislators in the Minnesota State Capitol building that there's been some problematic artwork that's still hanging up in that building, and that's something that you have to face every day. So I just wanted to pop in and say, there's no gargoyles, but there's definitely some things that would indicate that Native people are not necessarily welcome in that space.
Yeah, I don't know. They're kind of gargoyles. That whole story and the art, Heather, State Representative Heather Keeler. Yeah, and I'm in St. Paul, and I don't know if you've ever been into the halls of St. Paul, the city council, but we got like Indians begging for food and big paintings, and it's just like, what the heck? And the boats and Ho-Chunk were removed from the state via boats. So it's just like, what is going on here? But hey, let's take a quick break here. And we're here with State Representative Heather Keeler of District 4 in Minnesota. And we're going to take your calls at 952-946-6205. And this has been a really, really fun conversation. And we're going to get down to the dirty and brass tacks now of what the heck is going on, Heather? I mean, don't answer that right now, but oh my God, what the heck is going on? Make America great again, like 1830, or what's happening? But we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
When it comes to COVID vaccinations, there's a lot of misinformation. Don't just rely on social media or an internet search. Talk to a medical professional. The immunity you get from a booster shot will last longer and offer more protection than immunity from getting sick with COVID. Plus, vaccinations are safe for people who are pregnant or have other health conditions. If you have any questions about COVID vaccines, call 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov. This message brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic.
Unwanted sexting or photos, inappropriate jokes, even tickling or wrestling can feel like a violation. Catcalling, cornering, or groping, getting them drunk or high for sex, recording sexual acts without permission, hurting someone because of their sexual orientation, raping a family member, a child, a date, a friend, a stranger, purchasing a human being for sex. You make the choice every single time. Sexual violence is many things. Make a choice. Do not do it.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hello, Minneapolis. Make sense, make progress, make a date, make an appointment with me. Weeknights from 10 to midnight here on AM 950.
2022 continues to be a hot real estate market, and any advantage you gain could net you thousands of dollars. If you do plan to move at some point, installing a system from All Energy Solar could increase your resale value and help you sell your home faster. Energy costs will not be going down anytime soon, so a property with a solar energy system could make it much more attractive to potential buyers. Buyers consider electric bills when buying a home, and installing solar panels is viewed as an upgrade. Each kilowatt of solar energy could increase the resale value of your home by thousands of dollars. And even when you sell your home, you'll likely recoup the costs of switching to solar thanks to your increased property value. So if you plan to sell your home, make your home as attractive as possible to buyers by switching to All Energy Solar. Get a free, no-obligation assessment from All Energy Solar by calling 800-620-3370 or visiting allenergysolar.com. That's allenergysolar.com.
Hi, this is Chad from AM 950. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed roofing, siding, window, and insulation contractor in the metro. Ryan is so excited about working with AM 950 and our listeners that he wants to help us grow.
This is Ryan, owner of Snap Construction. I was friends with Chad long before I started marketing with him. I was a bit skeptical of radio advertising before Chad convinced us to run ads. The advertising's been so successful, we want to help the station grow. We've absolutely loved working with the listeners of AM 950, and we all know how extremely important this radio station is to the community. To help AM 950 grow this summer, Snap Construction will be putting up proceeds to assist the station in marketing on social media. Snap Construction encourages you to follow, engage, share, and interact on the AM 950 social media platforms. Together, we can all work to ensure AM 950 continues to thrive and grow in our communities. We stand by our work with a lifetime craftsmanship guarantee. For a free estimate or more information on our financing, call 612-333-SNAP or check us out online.
Hi, I'm Scott Shambot from Shambot Family Dentistry. We're the fear-free, shame-free dental office. If you're having a dental emergency, we'll try and get you in the same day you call because we don't like to see anyone in pain. And we'll help you get through every appointment in the most pain-free way possible. As my daughter Rachel says,
if you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shambot Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblotfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for partly cloudy skies tonight with a low around 66. Wednesday, partly sunny with a high near 80. And Wednesday night, a chance for thunderstorms with a low around 68. Eat Local Minnesota is a great way to find locally owned Minnesota restaurants and food purveyors. They feature high-quality food and unique eating experiences for your next meal. Some of those dining options include Crooner Supper Club, the Great Wall Restaurant, and Nightingale. Find a full list of all those restaurants at eatlocalminnesota.com.
Bijou. I am Oshawashko Gijig. I'm from Red Lake Nation, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. Hey, and this portion is brought to you. Oh, go ahead, Oakham. I didn't see it. Go ahead.
This portion of the show is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization working for climate justice.
Wow, we're all messed up without Wendy. Wendy's still in New York here. She'll be home tomorrow. She's celebrating her sister's birthday, so she hasn't had an opportunity to do that in person in many, many years because I keep her hostage here in Minnesota. So she's out in New York at her other place and enjoying her retirement, and she'll be home tomorrow and being able to step in. We're here with State Representative Heather Keeler of Minnesota, and we're just kind of talking about her journey and what's happening and around the country here. But I want to talk a little bit about what surprised you the most at your new job as a state rep, and what disappointed you. And I think you have those maybe out in the forefront. You can start whichever one you want first.
Yeah, so I think all of it was a surprise. You know, you think you're going to go in and you're going to be able to like make these big changes, and you're so hopeful. And especially for somebody who maybe didn't really understand political science and the movement of things, like I just didn't know how big of a lift it really was to get things through the system, especially in Minnesota being a split legislature. And so I think they say it's a part-time job. You know, we get paid like it's a part-time job. I'll be really honest, and like the expectation of the constituents that I have, the expectations of the indigenous communities that I have, of the queer communities that we have in Minnesota, like I feel like this is our life, you know, that we do this 100% of the time, all of the time. And the truth is this work can consume you in that space. And the way that I work is that I allowed it to consume me. I mean, there are massive things that we need to unravel and untangle and rebraid and new policy ways to actually be effective long term. And so I was working, you know, nobody tells you to go home. Nobody tells you when to come into work, but I was working like 16 to 18 hours a day, all session. So we're in session from January until May. And our bodies just aren't meant to do that. And so walking through the emotional piece of, you know, I'm in this job and it is a really big job. It's a really emotional job. It's a really intense job, and it's a fast moving job. Like you have days or hours to get testifiers, to do your research, to understand what you're trying to do, to prepare for the other side to come at you. Like it is a massive amount of work. But you crash with that. And so like I'm learning that there's a consistency pattern that you have to learn in this work, that it's really emotional to step away from things that you really want to change and that you really want to bring light to. You know, like stepping away from really working on fixing our foster care system is really hard for me. Stepping away from putting massive amounts of money into shelter and homes for our communities is really hard to do. But you have to protect yourself to be able to do the longevity of the work. And so that's probably the biggest thing, is that this is far from a part-time job. And as listeners out here, I would ask that you have grace for your legislators who are really going in with these deep, passionate movements, because we do have sitting duck legislators that just sit there and they don't really do anything. They don't really work their bills. They just let lobbyists come and give them their bills, and they don't do the work like some of us really do the work. So know what kind of legislator you have serving you, and know what kind of work efforts they really put in to fight for these bills and these changes, because there's a clear difference who's working in those spaces for you.
I was going to ask you that, and you did say it. We were at some, I don't know, it was Winona's birthday. Where were we at? And Howard Ornstein was there, and he
Frank.
came up to me. Yeah.
Frank
Oh, Frank.
Ornstein.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And he came up to me without me going, "Hey, how's Heather doing?" He came right up to me and said, "I can't believe how great." He didn't say, "I can't believe." He said, "Heather's doing so great." And I'm just going, "Wow, this is great to hear." It was like, I didn't ask. So it's great that the people that matter out there, the doers, the doers know that you are a doer too, and doing the work. I was just proud to say I know you. It was just it was really cool experience to have somebody that's been in the state representative capacity for so long come up to me and just say that.
Yeah. I think, though, it's fair that we have to acknowledge that massive amounts of work ethic is actually a trauma response, and that I work the way that I work because it's a trauma response for me. Because if I slow down enough in this work, the actual conversations and the actual things that are happening start to impact me in a way that emotionally takes away from the work. And so also, I think that it has to be said, as Indigenous women, as women of color, brown women, brown individuals, we have to work 4 to 5 to 6 times harder just
Mm.
to show up in a room and be held like at that same level. It's amazing to me how many times in my first term I was confused for somebody's aide or like their assistant. Like it people never assume that I am a representative, entering into a room, and I present myself very well. If I wore jeans, oversized t-shirts and sneakers every day like some other colleagues of mine do, and they get away with that, my entrance into those tables would be viewed so differently. And it's just one of those pieces that's really unfair. And we have to step our game up so much more to show up and do the work. But I also want to acknowledge that extreme work ethic is a trauma response, and we need to be mindful that praising that all the time isn't always the best, because it's important that we take time to care for ourselves too in the work.
Yeah, he's very complimentary about you, is the point I wanted to make. But yeah, I get it too. So what was one of the positive things that you got out of this? Because you have to, and I'm in a situation where I'm elected 4 years, and I've just finished my first year, and I'm going, do I want to do this again? So I mean, you probably go through that daily. So what is some of the positive things that you've experienced in this place?
The relationships. I mean, there's so much power in relationships, and finding people who are not like you, finding people who have complete opposite views. It's funny because a lot of people kind of criticize me or laugh at me at the way that I choose to do this job. I choose to build relationships across the aisle. I choose to build relationships with people who we flat out just disagree on things, because I believe in finding slivers of commonality. And can we do that in every space? No, absolutely not. Can we do that in some of the spaces? Yeah, but you can't do that unless you have trusting relationships. And so, I've invited people from the other party into our spaces so that they truly understand what the beauty of a powwow is and what our culture is and how we, invest in that space in higher education. And so, I think that the beauty in the relationships is there. I think it's designed for us to be polar opposites. But I think if we bring more people into the table who really just want to do good for Minnesota, we can really accomplish a lot. And so relationships would be my answer.
That's awesome. And you got that as probably being in education, because I think that be a good educator and goes along with probably being a good politician in person is that you have to meet people where they're at.
Also, Robert, I don't know that I want to be a good politician. I want to be a politician that like shake things up and really like challenges these systems who have.
Well, you'll be a historic politician then.
Okay, I feel like telling me I'm a good politician is like falling in line with what politicians have always done, and I really hope to change that and change the view on how we show up in these spaces.
Olgama.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You are a good politician. You're the politician that we need. And we need to change what that definition of a good politician looks like.
I feel like I like sitting at the table, like that auntie that kind of has always listened to you and then is going to go into the fight for you and like have your back. Like that's more my mentality in this space, is that I don't make decisions as a legislator for me. Sitting there in that space as Heather Keeler is one thing. Sitting in that space knowing that I'm representing an entire district that has unique needs, that I'm representing our entire Indigenous community, and not for all of us. Like, I'm not a voice for all of us, but I'm a voice to uplift all of us. We've brought people in to be testifiers. We've brought tribal leaders in to testify in education spaces, which they've never done. We've really been able to bring more voices to the table because people like me, Jamie Becker-Finn, Mary Kunish, Peggy Flanagan, are at these tables and at these spaces. So hopefully we can shake the boat up a little bit, huh?
Yeah, well, we're here for you too. And I think part of our journey with Rock the Vote Native Style, presented by Native Roots Radio, is going to amplify people like us and like-minded people, and also people that need our support and your knowledge, because it's fresh from you wanting to be a school board member, and all of a sudden you're a state representative to this big state of Minnesota, which can be daunting. And I think too, what I was trying to do too is also give you a compliment about being a good person. You meet people where they're at. You know what I mean? And you don't try and change them. You meet them where they're at. You learn that as working as a liaison, I'm sure, in school, because there were so many different personalities. And now you're probably dealing with some people that are probably not as mature as some of the students you've worked with over the years.
Yeah, it was interesting. I used to say my favorite age groups to work with were 8th grade boys and senior girls, because I just felt like they knew everything in the world at those ages. And I do feel like there are times that understanding those age ranges is nice for communication skills, because sometimes you just have to scale it way back to the foundation of like, what is it that we want to do here? Like, what is the goal and what is the purpose? Yeah, it's always an interesting space to be in. And that's what I liked about the end of my first term versus the beginning, is as COVID started to lift a little bit, we were able to be in person more, and building those relationships, face to face is just so much different than doing it over Zoom, for sure.
Well, I want to get into some hard-hitting stuff the last segment, and that'll be, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on politically across the country here, because, we are all over Turtle Island on Native Roots Radio, and I know it's been a hard, daunting, emotional experience for many of us, and I don't want to revisit that for you, but I do want to talk about some solutions and things like that, because we're lucky to be in the state of Minnesota that supports women, at least at this point, and how important this election is going to be, Heather. We'll talk a little bit about that, because I think one of the things that you mentioned too earlier too is I'm really, really afraid of the Supreme Court and ICWA coming up.
Oh,
and that's going to blow my mind. And so why don't we take a break, see if anyone's going to call. We always, to get people to call, we always have a fake caller call in first, and then everyone else falls in. They don't want to be the first one. So maybe Jace can call in, Ogama's husband or something. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, we're going to be right back with State Representative Heather Keeler and Ogama. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents Rock the Vote Native Style.
Hey
Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Don't fall for vaccine misinformation. Local medical professionals are available to answer any of your questions. Initial shots and boosters are safe for people who are pregnant and even young children. Right now, vaccines are available for anyone over 6 months of age, while boosters are available for anyone over the age of 5. This message brought to you by the Native American Community Clinic. Find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
I missed it. I missed the howl.
Well, just pretend you did it. We'll get you the next week. Wow, we're here with State Representative Heather Keeler, and what a great, we've had some really good responses here on Facebook and YouTube and about about the content and everything. So we're really excited that people are enjoying this as much as Ogama and I are to have Heather with us again. And Heather, I'm just going to let you flow because, my goodness, there's been stuff going on here the last few months that's just, it's daunting. Oh, did you want to say something, Ogama?
I actually have a question for Heather
Oh.
related to the recent rulings of this. It's a little bit related to the recent rulings of the Supreme Court, but I know that there's a lot of people who are pushing for Minnesota to go red. What does that sound like in the Minnesota legislature, or was that pretty quiet before this this overturnal of Roe and the changing of the EPA's ability, as well as the McGirt decision? All of those things happened and came down just this last week. Do you have fears in the legislature about Minnesota becoming a state that does not offer the freedom to choose?
You see my son in the background? Say hi, DJ.
Yeah,
You're gonna creep in the background.
He's gotten tall too. I just
So-
see pictures of him going. He spouted like 6 inches in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a reality, right, of life, is that as I do this work because I'm a mom, and trying to be a voice at the table as an Indigenous person, but also as a mom trying to make sure that I can look my kids in the eye and let them know that, like, I'm doing more than just complaining about things on social media. Like, what Supreme Court is doing is that I'm actually showing up in spaces to fight for that. So, yeah, I mean, back to the question, it's terrifying, right? To be, to know that we have to fight so hard just to hang on to our rights. I feel like we should be in a world that we're progressing and we're understanding that the beauty of America is that we're also uniquely individual. And when we start to say, like, I'm only beautiful and you're not, and that gets really harmful. And in a world that I choose to lead with love and I choose to see the beauty in everybody, and like I said earlier, like slivers of commonality, like there's good in all of us. And it's really terrifying to see what can happen when a couple people can make decisions that negatively impact massive populations. And this is why, I used to kind of laugh when they were like, oh, you like vote like your life depends on it. Like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, like, and then in 2016, like I remember waking up just in this weird, massive anxiety moment. And this is why. And I tell
Yeah.
people that it's one thing to show up in November and vote. Yes, do that. But get involved. Like it takes so much work to get to the vote. Like if you think about it, what's your process of deciding who your legislator is? And what's your process of holding your legislator accountable or asking them questions? Especially the ones who've been sitting in seats for like years and years and nobody really steps up to challenge them. We have to do that. And I'll be really honest, as the DFL here in Minnesota, we don't talk about choice, we don't talk about guns, and we don't talk about line 3 because we don't have a majority that supports that. So just because they're in a line with the party with you, like ask those questions, understand, how they're going to go into this battle for you, because it's extremely, extremely important that we have people that are no longer neutral on these topics, because neutral is more harmful than anything. We need leaders who want to step up and really have the guts to go to fight for things that we will never really see the impacts of it, y'all. Like what is happening is going to be impacting our kids and their kids. And we have to have the courage and the grit and the humility to step up and actually fight for those. And we have way too many neutral legislators right now in this time. And in Minnesota, we have to really step up and not only keep the legislators that we have, but get out there and really get involved in some of these communities.
So are you saying too that we should really vet out our senators and representatives right now too, before we vote for them, even though they're Democrat?
Yeah. I
and
mean, I will tell you here, we're still anti-Indian. It's one thing to say that we're inclusionary and we want to care about, certain things, but at the end of the day, we are still living in an anti-Indian policymaking world. And that includes all parties, all seats. So like, how do you challenge your legislators to be more open-minded? How do you challenge your legislators to care about tribal relations and tribal consultations and making sure that, our tribal relatives are actually considered equals in decision making? We're not even there. So have conversations with your legislators and ask them how they're educating themselves on the importance of those roles. So many people don't even know that Minnesota is 100%, treaty ceded treated territory, or that we have, what sovereign nations we even have in this state. It's just really concerning that like people who are making decisions for Minnesota just don't even understand the land and the history, and the people who are making decisions for.
Right. And that's why this show is so awesome, to have people like you talk to our allies, because me being 61 years old, we did not learn this. We did not learn this in school. Before 1978, we were all pretending to be Italian and everything. We weren't proud to be Native because of all the imagery, the movies, the sports teams, and all these things that we need to and have been fighting for a long time, but we still have a big uphill battle, Heather.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is, people have to show up. If you're mad, show up in spaces, look at other, like, if you live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and you live in a really blue district, and you know that your legislator or your senator is going to go back and fight for the things that you want them to fight for, that's great. If you live in Wisconsin, if you live in places that your legislator is good for you, that's great. What else are you going to do? There are other seats that we need to flip. There are other seats that we need to help. There are other seats that need donations, that need door knockers, that need people to show up. And I say this, like, it is not just voting like your life depends on it. Get involved, get angry, get mad, get involved, like, get really passionate about your purpose. Everybody has a lane to make change. It doesn't mean that you have to run for an office. but find a space, find an organization, find something that you can really be a part of, this movement, because we are all in this for a really long journey of healing, reconciliation. Our next generations need us to step up out of our own comfort zones like yesterday.
Well, Heather, one of the things too, Matt McNeil talks about too is when he has his Democrat of the Day on his show, is to help these people. Exactly what you just said. Go up there and help, whether it's financially or knocking on doors. And I think that's something that we should talk about always now on Rock the Vote Native Style here. That's just some great advice.
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do, or what we're going to do, is, we have some really amazing candidates running, and like I've shared my story, and like you've given me the opportunity to really be a part of representation, not only in this election, but to the little Heathers out there who don't see themselves anywhere else in the world. We want to be visible. We want to show up. We want to have those conversations. So I'll be bringing other candidates, other legislators into this space so that you all can learn about their movements and invest in their change too.
Wow, that's perfect. And wow, that's a really good way to end the show here. Wow, Heather, thank you so much, Peeny Gigi, for being on and just being the rock star that you are. And we're going to do this thing with your help and your support out there. You're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and we're ending the show. And I just want to say, from Chief Plenty Coops, the ground in which we stand on is sacred ground. It is the blood of our ancestors. We need to resist, divest, join a group, run for office. You've been listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, Peeny Gigi to Ogama with all the background stuff. And of course, State Representative Heather Keeler, thank you so much for being on today. And we'll see you a week from today.
Do you believe in ghosts? Ever wondered if aliens from other planets visit